Hello, students. Welcome to the 8th lecture on the enemy, the author of which is Pearl S. Buck. So, it has been quite a long time that we haven't met for any class. So, we are returning after a long time. I suppose you remember the story till where we had left. Just for your quick brief up, let us go into the previous portion that we have already covered up in brief, or let us just sum up what we saw in our previous lectures. So in our previous classes we had seen that Dr. Sadao, a Japanese doctor, he finds an enemy sailor at his doorsteps who had fainted and who was wounded with a bullet. So he takes this white man home and treats the man back to recovery. But he is faced with numerous challenges. First thing is his own moral, his own consciousness telling him that it was wrong to harbor an enemy. Secondly, the opposition coming from the servants at home because they were totally unhappy with the decision made, because they think that by harboring a traitor, by harboring an enemy, Dr. Sadao was actually behaving like a traitor to the nation, right? And that is why they decide to leave the house. And plus, he is also compelled by Hannah's restlessness. Hannah, his wife, who had actually assisted him, helped him in taking care of the enemy sailor, she is also very much worried because it has been quite some time that they had been keeping or hiding this man in their house, and it could be very dangerous to the family, to the life of their children, as well as to the reputation of the Sadaos, okay, of the Hockeys rather. So finally Sadao decides that he would go to the general and he would let him know, inform him. He even tries to type a letter, but then, however, for some reason, he could not complete that report or that letter. And when a police messenger arrives at his home and calls him, or rather tells him that the General Takima wants to see him, he makes up his mind that he was going to tell everything before the general. So let us see from that part. So here we come when Sadao goes to see the general. The general, he was again feeling that pain. He was undergoing treatment under Dr. Sadao, and once again he was in need of Dr. Sadao. So Dr. Sadao goes to the palace to meet the general. Of course, the general said weakly, "I understand fully, but that is because I once took a degree in Princeton, so few Japanese have." Now, what do you understand from these lines? The general, he said weakly because he was suffering from that pain, okay? He says that he understands Sadao. That means Sadao had already informed him about the presence of the enemy, how this man had been washed ashore by the side of his house, and how he had taken him inside, treated him. Alright, and the general, he says that yes, I can understand your problem, and the reason is that I once took a degree in Princeton. Now, why or how is Princeton related? Let me tell you, Princeton is famous for its university, okay, and it is situated in USA, right? So the general, he had his education in Princeton, USA, and let me tell you, interestingly enough, Princeton is a university where a lot of research has been going on regarding racism, okay, racism between various races, that cultural conflict that exists between various cultures, various race, various creeds of people. This place is known, the university is known basically because of that. Okay, and our general, he had been to this foreign nation, to America, for his higher studies, and that is why he says he could understand the dilemma that Sadao was going through, or rather the circumstances under which he had to harbor an enemy. But it is difficult for common people, common Japanese, just like the servants in Dr. Sadao's house, to understand his situation. Right? I care nothing for the man, Excellency, Sadao said. But having operated on him with such success, there is a pause. Sadao could not complete because he is stopped by the general. Sadao here tries to offer an explanation to the general that he is not in any way affected by the American prisoner. However, his confidence as a doctor, it has been boosted to a great degree, to a great level, having completed his operation successfully upon the American patient. Okay, so from here, one thing is very clear, that Dr. Sadao, he wants to prove it to the old general that he had operated upon the enemy soldier only as a part of his research. Okay, it is not out of concern or sympathy or feeling. Otherwise, he would have, handed over this enemy to the army or to the police. But he did not do so. He attempted the surgery upon this. That means, in a way, the enemy has been treated as a guinea pig, as a test. Okay, so this would definitely satisfy the old general. And the old general, he's taken in just like Sadao had expected. And he appreciates Sadao's skill as a doctor. Okay, so he says, yes, yes, the general said, it only makes me feel you more indispensable to me. Indispensable means very essential, even more essential. You are now a life jacket for my ailment, he says. Evidently, you can save anyone. You are so skilled. You say you think I can stand one more such attack as I have had today. So he had been suffering from some chronic pain. Okay, it was a gallbladder problem, and he had been suffering from that pain for a long time. It's a lingering pain, and he had already undergone several attacks. Okay, and it was a very critical position. It was a very critical condition, health condition. Okay, and Sadao had told him that he won't be able to tolerate or handle more such attacks. And here the general is trying to reconfirm, okay, the same thing that has been told by Dr. Sadao. Not more than one, Sadao said. So the general, he seems to be worried because he, according to Dr. Sadao, his doctor, his very trusted doctor, he has already let him know that he won't be able to withstand any more such attacks but one. Okay, so it is confirmed that he would not allow anything to befall on Dr. Sadao. Right? So Sadao says that no, sir, exactly what I have said. Like I said before, it's not more than one attack that you would be able to withstand. And then certainly I can allow nothing to happen to you, the general said with anxiety. So his long, pale Japanese face became expressionless because he was so worried with his own health issue. He had almost forgotten that here Sadao was talking about his enemy as well, the enemy soldier who has been harbored in his house. He had forgotten that. And his long, pale Japanese face became expressionless, which meant that he was in deep thought. He was thinking deeply. You cannot be arrested. So, anything cannot be allowed to happen to Dr. Sadao. Dr. Sadao cannot be arrested at any cost. Why? Because he was necessary for the old general's life. Okay, and he could trust on Dr. Sadao. The general said, closing his eyes, "You cannot be arrested," he said. Okay, suppose you were condemned to death. Suppose for harboring this enemy you are condemned, you are sentenced to death, and the next day I had to have my operation. What will happen? Who will take care of me if I have that attack and I have to be operated the very next day? If you are sentenced to death, okay? There are other surgeons, Excellency, Dr. Sadao suggested. So Sadao says that you don't have to worry about that because you already have more doctors. Okay, so from this, what can you understand? Here, one thing is very, very clear. The general's sense of patriotism and commitment to his nation, it has been put to question. Don't you think that his action is a breach of trust towards the nation? Whereas Sadao, despite having saved the enemy soldier, is bold and honest enough not to lie to the nation, and that is why, like a true patriot, he confronts the terrorizing army general, General Takima, and reveals the truth. He is not afraid. As such, we can understand that Sadao succeeds not only as a perfect doctor but also as a pure patriot. Now, what light does it throw on the character of the general? You can see that the general is a scheming, very manipulative, and a self-centered man who is only and only worried about his own health and position in the state. He doesn't want to die because if he dies, his position would be given to someone else. He wants to continue in that powerful position for a longer time. So, though Sadao tells him that he has been harboring an enemy in his house, instead of taking any action, he thinks of other things. Okay, if something happens to Sadao, who will be taking care of his health? He's more worried about that. Okay, and though though Dr. Sadao also has a recommendation, he says that you have other doctors as well, but he is not ready to take the risk because he has seen that Dr. Sadao has been successful in handling the wounded enemy, the enemy who had already, who was actually dying, who was in such a bad condition. That man has regained his sense, that man has recovered from his dying condition. So anything was possible for a man like Dr. Sadao, and that is the reason he decides that Dr. Sadao must not be harmed. So he is some kind of counterfoil for Dr. Sadao's character as such, right? None I trust, the general replied. So when Dr. Sadao says that there are other surgeons, he says that I don't trust anybody else. The best ones have been trained by Germans and would consider the operation successful even if I died. So, according to the general, most of the qualified Japanese doctors, they are trained in Germany, and that is why they are trained to be brutal enough, okay, as far as practice is concerned. Their concern is more on application. Okay, application is important, theory is important, how they conduct the operation, that is important, not the consequence, not the result. It doesn't matter to them if the patient dies during the diagnosis or the treatment, right? So the general, he says, the best ones have been trained by Germans and would consider the operation successful even if I died. I do not care for their point of view. He shied. He's not satisfied with the other doctors. That is why he doesn't want to hand himself over to the other doctors in Japan. It seems a pity we cannot better combine the German ruthlessness with the American sentimentality. Now, this is a very, very important statement made by made by the general. He's talking about German ruthlessness on one side and American sentimentality on the other. The Germans, they are known to be ruthless people, brutal people, very brutal. I suppose you have heard about Nazi Germany, a Germany which was under the control of the Nazis. The Nazis were a very, very brutal, people, you can call people, or dictators. Hitler, he had been a dictator. He had suppressed people. He had massacred people, massacred the Jews. On the other hand, American sentimentality. Americans are known for their concept of humanity and concept of sympathy towards towards universe, towards people, be it of any category, any class, any caste, right? So here he's saying that it was better if we could combine both these elements together. One is German ruthlessness, the other one is American sentimentality. And why? There is an explanation, you see. Then you could turn your prisoner over to execution, and yet I could be sure you would not murder me while I was unconscious. The general laughed. He had an unusual sense of humor. As a Japanese, could you not combine these two foreign elements? He asked. In a very humorous manner, he is asking a very critical question. He is asking Dr. Sadao if it wasn't possible for him to combine both the elements. That means what? Earlier also I have told you that the general, he knows that the doctors who are trained in Germany, they are taught to be brutal, taught to be ruthless when treatment is concerned. But doctors trained in America, like Dr. Sadao, they are far more sympathetic as well as caring towards their patients. Saving the life of the patient is more important than the process involved. Does this statement make sense as to why Sadao got deeply involved in saving the life of the American enemy sailor? Because when he found the wounded sailor, it was not an American. It was a patient. It was a man who needed help. If it is possible, he could save the life of the man. Remember what was the diction, what was the statement that was being given by the American professor in his class? He was taught to save a life, if at all it was possible. So this is what American sentimentality in medical practice, that is being discussed about here. Okay, but the general, he has a different outlook. According to him, if it was better if Sadao could mix up both the qualities of German brutality and American sentimentality. He's not happy about the fact that the enemy was helped or rescued by Dr. Sadao. At the same time, he is happy that Dr. Sadao's caring and sympathetic nature has given life to a man. Okay, so he felt that his own life was secure at the hands of Dr. Sadao, right? So that is why he could understand that Dr. Sadao had actually hesitated to hand over the enemy because he was He had that sentimentality of the Americans, right? And that is why he is sure, the general is sure, that Sadao would be equally concerned about his old patient, General Takima. But he felt, the general actually felt, that if Dr. Sadao was a combination of the German ruthlessness and American sentimentality, then he would have definitely, willingly, brutally, without thinking about anything else, handed over this enemy to the police. And at the same time, he would have been sentimental enough to save the life of his general. Okay? So, ironically, General Takima is here actually doing what? He is exposing his true color. His true color. It's not Sadao that he is exposing, it is himself that he is exposing. We can see his fear of death. We can see his lack of humanity. We can understand that he is a counterfoil to Dr. Sadao's character. Okay? Sadao smiled. Okay? He could say nothing, but he smiled. I'm not quite sure, he said, but for your sake, I would be willing to try, Excellency. So I'm not very sure, but then if you desire so, definitely I would try. The general shook his head. I had rather not been the test case, he said. He doesn't want to be a guinea pig, just like the American sailor. He still thinks that Dr. Sadao had operated upon the sailor because he was trying upon a test case. He was trying it as a part of his research, which actually was not. Okay, somewhere or the other, he is being tricked by Dr. Sadao here. He felt suddenly weak and overwhelmed with the cares of his life as an official. He had been an official throughout his life. He has been burdened with responsibility. In times such as these, when repeated victory brought great responsibilities all over the South Pacific, it is very unfortunate that this man should have washed up on your doorstep, he said irritably. He was very angry with the fact that things had happened the way it had happened. If the man had not been washed at the doorstep of Dr. Sadao, all these worries, all this tension wouldn't have been shouldered, wouldn't have been burdened upon his head. Now, what does it mean? The general is irritated by the fact that now he has an added responsibility. Now he has to think out a way by which he could offer a proper solution to the presence of the enemy at his most trusted doctor's house without harming the doctor. Right? And see, it is a long time that he has been in authority and control. Already he had been successful in his consecutive wars and annexure or capture of new territories, in an expansion of Japanese territories. But this news of the enemy's presence, if it is out, that would raise specks of doubts over his authority, and he doesn't want this to happen. So he says that it was really a misfortune that this man was found at Dr. Sadao's doorstep. Okay? I feel it so myself, Sadao said gently. Sadao had nothing to say but to accept. Only he could accept it. It would be best if he could be quietly killed, the general said. Not by you, but by someone who does not know him. I have my own private assassins. Okay, so assassins or assassination. What does it mean? What is assassination? The general has a plan now, you know, and the plan is to assassinate the enemy sailor, through his private assassins. Now, before that, let me explain you what is assassination. Getting a person, an important person, killed for political or diplomatic reasons, it is assassination. It is slightly different from murder. Though it is a murder, it is a political murder. Okay, so murder, the term cannot be used. And it is not only a single person killing somebody. There is a head, it's a bigger, there is a reason, proper reason for killing this man, right? And assassins are those people who carry out this job. If you have read or seen the plays of Shakespeare, assassins are characters that occur very frequently in Shakespeare's play, be it Julius Caesar or be it any other. Okay, et tu Brute, the famous lines quoted by Julius Caesar. Brutus, who was one of the closest of Julius Caesar, the emperor of Rome, it was Brutus who stabs him from behind. Okay, and seeing him, Julius Caesar, he spoke these last words, very remarkable, et tu Brute, you too Brutus. So this is the meaning of the words. Okay, anyways, coming back to the text. Now, the general has a plan, and the plan is to get the man assassinated, get the American assassinated by sending his own private assassins. Now, this man, the general, he was keeping his own assassins. Now, this is a very important question. Why he keeps assassins? Okay, so anyways, suppose I send 2 of them to your house tonight, or better, any night. You need know nothing about it. Just forget about it. Don't have to put in your head in this matter. He says, it is now warm. What would be more natural than that you should leave the outer partition of the white man's room open to the garden while he sleeps? So he enacts a plan, and according to the plan, what should Dr. Sadao do? Dr. Sadao should keep the blinds, or keep the partitions, the openings of the room of this man open, because it's summertime, it's quite warm, and it's necessary to get the breeze in. Okay, so it would sound very natural to keep the partitions open, and taking chance of that, his assassins would enter the room of the American and get him stabbed. Okay, so this is the plan that has been hatched by that general. Sadao has no option. Now, what does he say? Certainly, it would be very natural, Sadao agreed. In fact, it is so left open every night. So, every night the partitions are kept open, so that would not be a cause of concern. Even the American would not doubt, okay, if the partition is kept open. Good. The general said, yawning. They are very capable assassins. Capable assassins. Why? How does he know so? Because these assassins have been carrying out the general's order earlier as well, and very successfully. They are very capable assassins. They make no noise, and they know the trick of inward bleeding. If you like, I can even have them remove the body. So the general, he says yawning. Yawning, why? You can understand the casual attitude of the general. He is less focused on the worries and tensions of Dr. Sadao. There is a lack of seriousness in what he's saying. So we don't know whether his words will actually take the shape of action or not. Now, let me tell you one thing. Inward bleeding is actually a hemorrhage. You bleed internally, the blood doesn't come out of your body, but then you die. Stroke, Okay, you might have heard how people die due to stroke. What is stroke? It's nothing but hemorrhage. The blood cloaks. It doesn't come out of your body, and because of that clotting of blood inside your body, you are unable to breathe properly. The oxygen stops flowing through your body and the person dies, right? So these assassins know the trick of hemorrhaging, causing hemorrhage in people's body. And he also assures that you don't have to worry about the dead body also. Why? Because it would be taken care of by the assassins. Sadao considered that perhaps would be best. Excellency, he's agreed, thinking of Hana. So Sadao considered why he doesn't directly say yes. He takes some time, he considers the fact. Perhaps it would be the best. Internally he is not happy or satisfied with the plan, okay, but then uh, you know our Satao, he has to do it for his family. And regarding assassination, here are two pictures. As you can see, one is the assassination of Gandhiji, Mahatma Gandhi, by the Nathuram Godse. I suppose you know how Gandhiji was killed or assassinated just after his prayer meeting. After he came out of the temple, he was being shot dead by Nathuram Godse. Nathuram Godse bowed low, touched his feet, and shot him from a very close proximity. And the last words that Gandhiji spoke at the time was, "Hey Ram." And the second picture showing the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln was also shot dead. Okay, he was assassinated. Both political figures, and both killed or assassinated for political reasons. Right. And Sadao, he understands that people like Takima keep assassins to maintain their political motives. He is not quite happy because he is not so ruthless, or not so you can say self-centered like the general. Okay, but then thinking about Hana, thinking about his family, he is forced, he is compelled to think. So after the conversation with the old general, what does he say? Let us see. He left the general's presence there and went home, thinking over the plan. Entire way back home, he was considering, thinking, rejuvenating on the, not rejuvenating, he is recollecting. The plan is coming back to his mind. The words spoken by the general coming back to, flashing back in his mind, how the plan was to be executed. And he was considering the fact whether that was a right decision. In this way, the whole thing would be taken out of his hands. The plan was not that bad because here Dr. Sadao would not be involved directly. Okay, he would tell Hana nothing since she would be timid at the idea of assassins in the house. So, considering Hana's restlessness, she had already been worried and tensed. She had been going through a rough phase. So he's so worried about Hana. So you can see here the caring attitude of Dr. Sadao, even as a husband, even as a person. So he decides rather that he would not let Hana know anything about the plan, and that would be carried out in secret. And yet, certainly, such persons were essential in an absolute state such as Japan was. How else could rulers deal with those who opposed them? Now, this is a very important question raised by Dr. Sadao. The idea was not totally acceptable, getting a man murdered or assassinated. But then, this was what was actually happening in states like, in places like, or in countries like Japan. Why? It was a country which was absolutely in the control of one powerful regime, okay, or dictatorship. So, a country where there is autonomy where there is monarchy, where there is one authority, their assassination is a simple term. Things like this happen. Or otherwise, how could rulers deal with those who oppose them? You know, people like General Takima or Hitler would not have been able to rule kingdoms, rule powerful nations, if not for people like assassins who come very, very handy. So, after his conversation with the old general, Sadao was clear that dictators and rulers used ruthless measures like keeping assassins to remove major obstacles from their way. And it is this that ascertained their position, their political victory, and their long term authority. I suppose you have understood this portion. Thank you very much. Keep watching.